All right, so we are here live.
Hi Smita, this is Deepa.
Hi Deepa, so lovely to see you. We get
Same.
started. Hello everybody, thank you very much for taking your time out on a Thursday for this really interesting conversation. Just a request, because we are live on FB and we have a lot of people online, if you could put yourselves on mute, and we'll get a lot of time for all of you to be asking questions. So we will open up the lines then and you can ask questions. So welcome. I hand this over to Madhura first. Madhura, you want to get started?
Yes, Smita, thank you. So hello all, welcome for today's session by ILA and KelpHR on the PoSH law, and we are here to discuss Indian Lawyers Association. We are in India with a presence in about 75 plus cities. We do different events, initiatives, and activities that give platform for lawyers and all legal professionals for networking, mentoring, and getting guidance, or even for continuing their professional education. Maybe by tonight or tomorrow morning, we'll send more details to you on email, and we all welcome you to join us on this mission. Smita, I hand it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madhura, for a quick introduction about ILA. So ILA and KelpHR have been doing sessions together. The idea is come together and simplify the whole aspect of PoSH. A little bit of introduction about KelpHR. We started in 2013, exactly the year when we got this law, Prevention of Sexual Harassment, the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace, Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Act 2013. Many a times when we look at the law and we see some aspects, it's just one paragraph given in, and we always wonder how to decipher more, how to learn more. So KelpHR and ILA came together and we said that let's start simplifying things. So today's subject is very, very interesting. It is about conciliation. So before I start about the subject, a little bit about myself. I have total of 23 years of experience. I started as an HR person. From last 7 years, I have been running KelpHR. I'm the CEO and co-founder. 2020, I was listed in the global diversity list as a consultant, D&I consultant. With me, I have this amazing panel members. So you can see them. Let me start with Anusha first. So Anusha has been associated with ICUL as an associate. Okay, so she is based out of Chennai since 2020 as an associate, in Chennai. Being part of the corporate team, her role involves drafting, researching, providing legal opinions, vetting of various commercial contracts, and conducting due diligences. Prior to joining the firm, she worked as a senior associate in an MNC, where she headed various legal projects outsourced by Thomson Reuters. She also has an experience in legal marketing, which is where she began her career. She graduated in law from the School of Excellence in Law, Chennai. As a passionate orator and conversationalist, she has an avid participation in various debates, elocutions, represented her college in moot court competitions held in Delhi and Punjab. So that's about Anusha. Niharika Arora, we have here. She is the council member of Anti-Sexual Harassment Council in Delhi, in WICI. She is Women's Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry and has insight of law and practical aspects concerning it. She is an LLM graduate in international law with knowledge and experience in humanitarian, human rights, and corporate law. Currently a legal consultant with various organizations and external member. She has delivered several training programs in prevention of sexual harassment. She's dedicated her career to the cause. So let's hear from her today. And finally, we have the gentleman on the group in the panel member, that is Deepak Kumar. He is the partner at Khaitan & Co, Mumbai, and works with employment, labor, and benefits practice of the firm. Recently recognized and listed as Asian Legal Business India Rising Stars on a range of contentious and non-contentious employment and labor matters concerning workforce and benefits, restructuring, managing industrial relations, strategizing India entry and exits, among others. A regular contributor on regulatory and policy developments and trends in employment law space. Deepak has taken up many speaking opportunities to discuss a range of employment and labor aspects at sessions organized by leading industry bodies and clients. So this is the panel, a huge, solid, super solid panel. So welcome on board, all of you. It is awesome to be able to speak to you. Before that, let me set the context. As I said in the beginning, conciliation. If you open English dictionary, this is what conciliation has to offer. It's an action of mediating between two disputing parties or people. Okay, that's it. So there are two parties, we are mediating between them. And what does the law say? Law says this one paragraph about conciliation. I've highlighted few aspects of it, that it is at the request of the grieved woman. No monetary settlement is provided there. Once we conciliate the matter, the same is forwarded to the employer to take action as specified. That comes out of the recommendation of Icy. We have to provide copies of settlement to both the parties. No further inquiry shall be conducted by internal committee once the conciliation is done. So that's about conciliation. And now we call Deepak, Niharika and Anusha. Just if you could get started and tell us few lines about what do you think about the subject, any highlights about the subject that you would want to share here. Deepak, you could get started.
Thank you, Smita, and very warm and good evening to everyone. Taken out time to hear us speak on this issue. A very interesting subject, and the context has been very well put up by Smita. Conciliation itself and the PoSH law and prevention of sexual harassment as a matter is taking up and getting a lot of traction in our country now. A lot of employers are warming up to it. Also, I understand there are a lot of hesitations, a lot of questions, not just amongst the target audience for protection of whom this law has been framed, but also in respect of employers also who have to manage and organize and ensure that appropriate committees are formed, safe and secure workplace is ensured for all their employees, and also a lot of employees who have to be part of the internal committee of the organization themselves and ensure that they act in a free and fair manner, while not just protecting the interests of the complainant and ensuring due justice is delivered, but also to the fact that the respondents are also not unjustly prejudiced or victimized at the workplace. And to be very honest, it's not an easy job to be done. It's something very difficult. And the law itself, if you read the act, which we very familiarly we call and refer to as a PoSH Act, it requires and provides broad outlines for how the committee members need to conduct the inquiry process. While they have been given wide powers in terms of conducting the inquiry and making a recommendation, there are a lot of aspects which are left out open, and the committee members are not judicially trained personnel. They are regular employees like anyone else. So a lot of guidance and is necessitated in that, and it's not something that you encounter on a daily basis. These are exceptional matters where they come in, and this provision on conciliation is one such aspect which sometimes becomes very a sticky subject as to how do you deal with it, and not just for complainants but also for committee members and for the management also, that how best we introduce this conciliation to the complainant, at what stage should it be introduced, how do you communicate about the terms of conciliation such that it it doesn't come out as as an aspect that somebody is trying to scuttle the proceedings or trying to dissuade the complainant into going for a more a compromise route and not moving forward with the complaint, but also while ensuring that in case if there is a possibility where the complainant and respondent can sit across a table and any misunderstandings or issues can be sorted out upon mutual discussion, is this something that can be done? So the intent of the law is very clear, but unfortunately, we have not seen too much of judicial precedents or jurisprudence developed on the subject as to how to come up with it. And there are a lot of questions amongst everybody as to how this should be introduced, how this should be perceived, at what stage should it be perceived, how long can these go on? And there is a lot of what we call it as a gray area, a lot of questions which revolve around this process. Not everybody is in favor of it. A lot of people tend to disagree with the part that if there is an act, and sexual harassment is a very serious offense and very serious allegation, and there should not be any ambiguity of conciliation. Inquiry should process, and whatever the committee then comes to a conclusion, that should be implemented by the management. So that the process of conciliation itself can have an effect in terms of delaying the process. That's the other side of the story. So not adding much to or giving much traction to it, but it has a lot of facets, but it does have on the side, it does have a possibility of resolving a lot of complaints, which can be resolved by mutual discussions at an early stage. But yes, we have to be very careful in how this is dealt with.
Absolutely, Deepak. It is sticky, and we'll have to be very sensitive. It's about mediating between two parties, and how delicately it is managed is important. So I'll go to Anusha. Anusha, any input from you? I hope I have done justice to your introduction. If you want to say anything, a minute or two.
Thank you so much. That was a wonderful introduction. So kudos to the PoSH law in itself. It's a beautiful initiative. The naive optimism surrounding the advantages of the PoSH Act needs to be balanced through a deeper understanding of the disadvantages hidden within the Act in its current form. So conciliation in PoSH law, it can be a boon as well as a bane depending on a case-to-case basis. For example, the offenses need to be differentiated into a minor indictable offenses and a major indictable offenses. The impact it has on the victim, the aggrieved party, the depth of the impact, and how much the party is aware of the benefit he or she will receive from the inquiry or the conciliation depends largely upon a lot of educating going through the person, the complainant. So if you're taking conciliation, it majorly depends on a case-to-case base, and there's no fast rule to say, fast rule to say that conciliation work in this case and will not work in this case. So, and to start with, I would like to say that with no monetary benefit, a bane in conciliation more often than not, the ICIC would tend to choose inquiry over conciliation. So that's my, to start with, I would like to say that.
All right. Thank you so much, Anusha. Niharika, I hope I have done justice to your introduction, and any two-liners from you before we get started.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for having me. And I feel conciliation has been explained very beautifully by my fellow panelists. The only aspect that I would like to add in what has already been said is the reason that why was conciliation made a part of this act. Nobody obviously knows the intent and reason, but there can always be this justification given that conciliation in its concept is basically a voluntary and a flexible way of resolving disputes. It's independent, it's confidential, it's basically it gives the power to the complainant to decide what essentially she wants, because this act in its most basic essence is saying that sexual harassment is subjective. So it enables the complainant to let us know what she finds is offensive to her. Like because impact is greater than intent under this act. And hence, in the same way, it extends to the fact that the complainant will decide whether she wants a mere apology or an inquiry, whether she wants to give the power to settle this complaint to the IC or she wants to take it herself. So maybe this aspect also needs to be considered while we discuss whether conciliation is good or bad under this act as it's given, because the psyche behind why we have it is also important, because it helps colleagues talk freely about what they found offensive, because it's often there are things which are misinterpreted, they're miscommunicated, or as we say, understood differently. It's not even miscommunication anymore because it's understood differently by different people. Hence, conciliation is a positive way of resolving disputes, provided it's handled carefully, provided there have been trainings in the organization before disputes have arisen, which are making it clear, which the point is going through, that conciliation is not settlement. Conciliation is dispute resolving. It's not settlement. We're resolving a dispute between two colleagues by themselves. We're enabling them to talk amongst themselves.
Awesome. That's really nice. And you reminded me a point. Actually, we are discussing one particular case, or rather helping two individuals, as you rightly said, and facilitating a discussion. And what we realized is there are two generations involved in it. And what is okay for my generation may not be okay for your generation, Niharika, because we ourselves belong to different generation, right? So for me, what is okay is just not coming okay to you, or for you, what is okay is not just coming. So we are disputing over it, and then it becomes a harassment
exactly
case, right?
Because the intent is to understand different backgrounds, different cultures, where you're coming from, what you interpret. It's like in the same family, my brother and me, we don't think alike. What I consider to be anti-feminist or anti-woman, he doesn't, because I have to make him think about my point of view. So that's why people think differently, and I feel the intent of the act needs to be considered before we interpret any of the provisions.
Absolutely. So I'm coming to my first question, and as we are discussing, I'll stay with you, Niharika, and tell me what you think about it. How often do you see complainant making a request of conciliation?
Yes, Varun.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
All that was done.
Yes, I
Yes.
am the person.
Personally, in the few cases that I've seen, they first 90% of my cases, in fact, they first wanted to do a conciliation. I would like to point out here that there were no major offenses, I would say, like major involving basically no physical sexual harassment cases. There were cases where there was staring involved. There were cases when there were sexual innuendos being involved in daily conversations. But yes, conciliation was, I have had a very positive experience with conciliation, because the girls who have come forward, the women who have come forward, they've always wanted to first address the point that the other person doesn't even know that they are doing wrong. They should first acknowledge that it's not right to just say whatever they please. It's not right to disregard the other person's feelings, to disregard what other person considers their boundary. Like, not everybody is okay to discuss what is going on in Game of Thrones in a workplace scenario. So it is something that we'll have to communicate, we'll have to make people understand, because as you rightly said, that there are so many generations working together these days, that I feel like it should have been a prerequisite. This anti-sexual harassment training should have been a prerequisite from the time immemorial, because there's so many people from so many backgrounds. You have to make them understand what is right and what is wrong at every, like in workplace scenarios. So yes, conciliation has been very positively received at my end.
Yeah, awesome. Deepak, do you think the same with the organizations that you have been dealing? How often do you see a complainant making a request for conciliation? You're on mute, Deepak.
That's it. So thank you, Smita, and a very interesting perspective from Niharika on the practical side of the things, being a member on a lot of internal committees for organizations. From a lawyer's perspective and advising management, particularly, we typically get a lot of questions about how the inquiry process has to be drawn out. Unfortunately, it so happens that most of our requests come when there is actually a complaint has been lodged, and the management find itself at sea, answering a lot of questions on formation of the committee, tackling of the responses. A few of the cases there are genuine concerns about how and where the conciliation should be offered as an option to the complainant. So we have seen a lot of hesitance at a lot of organizations who have not been proactive with trainings and helping out with debates on how conciliations and inquiries should be done up, how the employees need to be trained about what is an acceptable behavior at workplace. And as Niharika pointed, that if we have more of such internal trainings about acceptable behavior, what are the rights and privileges of women under the Sexual Harassment Act, the other members should be made aware of what is acceptable and not acceptable, particularly in terms of varying cultural backgrounds that we have, the difference in generations, the age gaps that you have, the difference in designation of various people that you have. And of course, no two workplaces are same, not even two departments in a workplace are same. Where you're looking at a new age organization in a metropolis like Mumbai will be completely different from a tier 2, tier 3 city or a traditional workplace at a smaller town. So things will be very different. The important aspect here is that people need to be made aware of the requirements of the SAC. The training should be there, and so that they don't find themselves at sea in terms of talking up and about the issue, and the complainant demanding that, as Niharika pointed out, that yes, the respondent should be made aware that there was something which was unacceptable for on the part of the women, and that the respondent should be made aware that something what they did was not something which is acceptable to the complainant. So that training and that aspect needs to be that will come only with training. And yes, when the actual matter comes at hand, a lot of employers who are not prepared and a lot of committee members who are not prepared, they are at sea and little bit apprehensive about how to introduce conciliation as a option to the complainant.
All right, awesome. So now I have a question for Anusha, that have you seen challenges in using conciliation as an alternative inquiry? Do you come across any specific challenges, Anusha? Oh, did I lose her? I can't see her. Niharika, you would want to pick up that question, or Deepak?
Well, the only thing that I've come across as Deepak sir said, that when we talk about conciliation, the first word that strikes in anybody's head is like, are we supposed to settle? This word settlement has been like a snap thing for conciliation. So the only challenge that I faced was to make them understand that conciliation is not settlement. Conciliation is basically both parties sitting together and having a dialogue about the dispute that arose, the problem that arose. So this is the only challenge I face for conciliation. After that, once we've crossed this path, once we've had an open dialogue on what it actually means and what are the repercussions, what are the rights post conciliation, if there's a conciliation settlement drafted, and if the respondent adheres to it, then the complainant is satisfied. If the respondent doesn't adhere to it, what are the rights of the complainant post that? Once this dialogue has been done, I feel that it is taken in a positive stride. But maybe Deepak sir will be able to tell us more about it.
Deepak, what do you think? Do you think any challenges come up other than when people use conciliation other than the full-fledged inquiry?
No, definitely, and a lot of times it happens that when you don't have, as pointed out, when you don't have sufficient training and education about these matters, the first time when you offer some option of conciliation to the complainant, is it that am I required to? Are you telling me that, oh, do I need to settle, or is it something I can get out of it? That what exactly do I get out of a conciliation? What exactly are the contours? So it's very important that as an IC member, you are clear in terms of when you offer an option of complainant or option of conciliation to the complainant, you also need to clarify that what does conciliation entail? What can come out of it? Of course, there's no option of monetary settlement. That should be clarified upfront. But yes, it is an opportunity for the complainant to sit across the table with the respondent and face up and ask that, okay, this was something which was there, which was not acceptable, and this is something I have a problem with, and then see that what does the complainant has to respond, what does the respondent has to say to that, and does he accept that it was something which was inappropriate on her part, and then we can come to it. And essentially, as Niharika pointed out, it's more to clear the misunderstanding or the air between two people, but it's mostly in the case where the complainant feels that there could be a possibility of misunderstanding or something that needs to be clarified. But a lot of cases, especially in the new age organization, you find that complainants are not averse to conciliation aspect upfront because they feel that respondent had consciously acted in a manner that was offensive or deliberately passed any sexually colored remarks or any actions which they're alleging, and they said that it was a deliberate action. It should be investigated and punished. Unfortunately or fortunately, what we see is in a society, as a matter of fact, the way the act of sexual harassment has also come up, and I'll not go into the historical aspects of why this law had come into force and how the inequalities in the society are drawn up. But the connotations are that it is something not looked up very favorably, and the intent and the expectation here is that there is an inquiry and then there's a punishment involved. Of course, so far it's not criminalized yet, but it's not. The perception is nothing short of it.
Yes,
so
absolutely. So Anusha is back. Anusha, I have a question for you. Okay, I think we missed you earlier. See, Deepak and Niharika were talking about this, and this comes up, right? If I think Deepak mentioned that the whole behavior is so is unwarranted for. Have you ever experienced a scenario where a person is sexually harassed, and the woman comes up to the IC and says that she wants to make a sexual harassment complaint, but she doesn't want any severe treatment to be or any severe penalty to be given to the respondent? So have you ever come across something like this? And I want to conciliate this matter, or I want to mediate this matter, but if you look at it, the offense was very, very severe and there are proofs for it. So have you ever come across any such situation, and what would your recommendation be for such a scenario?
I haven't come across, like, impliedly hearing those incidents I've come across in such a way. So what plays a huge role here is how the girl reacts. Consent plays a huge role, how she takes it, who is a go-to person. Often we are looking at corporate women. Deep down there are people in urban and rural areas who are not so strong. How do they perceive this? And for it's common for any person to putting me in that girl's shoes. I totally understand, like it's her reputation which is hidden behind for more reasons than one. She might there can be for National Commission of Women, they in their annual report 2018 to 19 stated that they recommended that they want conciliation removed from PoSH law, because even there's no minor offenses in sexual offenses. They term it like that. So they want it removed. So there's the other party which want it otherwise. They want to use conciliation for their own benefit. So considering both the sides, on a case-to-case basis, one has to ascertain, go deep into the problem and then analyze and take a call. Blindly, one cannot say that it's a grievous offense, but I want the solution, because here complainant plays a huge role. It's the burden of proof lies on the complainant. So I think that should also be heard. That part of the complainant also should be heard, and each case should be taken from a unique perspective, and putting a common rule for all the cases will defeat the purpose of the act.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you, Anusha. And I have a next question, that what could be the advantage of conciliation, particularly to complainant, if there is any advantage? That conciliation as a part of the law must have thought through what was the logic of bringing it. And Anusha just said that there is a discussion about removing that part. So getting it in, is it beneficial to any of the parties, specifically for complainant? Deepak, if you could attempt to respond to that question.
So, I was kind of waiting for Anisha to point it out. Yes, and there are sections who are in favor of conciliation. There are sections who are not in favor of conciliation as a matter, and we need to see that initially what was the intent, why conciliation was inserted as such and offered. It's just a matter of all, and also from the framework of how our system in terms of adjudicating processes, that we always do tend to look for an alternative resolution mechanism, which is there. So conciliation as an approach itself is provided, but we have to be very carefully see how the section is worded, because it's the way, if you start reading, it's not something which talks about, say, that it has to be necessarily offered to a complainant. It just says that the internal committee may, if the complainant requests, take steps to settle the matter between the complainant and respondent. So there's a lot of words which are kind of used in the section itself. It says that the internal committee may take steps if the complainant offers to settle the matter between respondent and between the complainant and the respondent. So that is the operative part that we need to very carefully take care of, and it's also on part of IC that whether they feel that they need to take steps and to ensure that there is a settlement between the parties. But as a matter, why conciliation probably was introduced and referred into the PoSH Act was also from the perspective that there is an alternative channel, and if the complainant feels that there is something that she expects from the respondent, and she can demand that this is something that has to be accepted by the respondent, and if the respondent accepts, there is a settlement that can be arrived at between the parties, and we don't need to go through a formal inquiry channel. I know it sounds, and NHRC's views are, I concur to it, and they are relevant in certain workplaces and circumstances where women might not be too empowered to open up and speak about their rights and actions. So, and those cases, and that is why the emphasis has been that it has to be initiated at the request of the complainant. And IC, then that's the reason why IC also, it's not mandatory, or the words are used that IC may take steps. It is also that to ensure that there is no undue pressure on the complainant to go through this conciliatory route and allow an easy way out for the respondent out of the allegation. And therefore it has to be very carefully navigated in by the IC also, that it's not an every request for conciliation that may be accepted by the IC. If they feel that prima facie there is no need for, or their settlement is something that may not be very fruitful in such a matter, an inquiry is a must, then they should and ideally proceed with the inquiry process as such. But yes, it's important factor is that the request for conciliation needs to come from the complainant, which is the aggrieved women.
Niharika, you heard what Deepak is saying, right? That conciliation has to come from the complainant. Now, the real practical world that we are in, corporate world, we do not read policies. We do not know that there is something called conciliation there, right? So, as a woman, I wouldn't have even known that there is something called as conciliation and I have a right of it. So does it become then IC's role to explain to them or point out to them or maybe nudge to them? I'm using too many words: nudge, point out, explain. So what is that you think becomes the IC's role to do?
As Deepak sir pointed out, that the law states that the IC may,
Right.
The word may is used. So obviously it's not a prerequisite to inquiry. But then at the same time, it is one of the courses that has been made available under the Act, and the complainant has been given the right to choose. I would again like to reiterate, the aim of the law is not to punish. It is to enable a sexual harassment free work environment, right? So the complainant needs to be informed of the choice. Also, I was going through the comments in the chat, and they have been saying the word offered is wrong. Yes, it is not offered as a prerequisite. It is offered, it is informed as a choice of going through. The complainant has the choice of going through conciliation or inquiry through IC. When conciliation is opted, the IC is only a facilitator. It is not a counsel to be involved and conciliate the matter for you. So all of this information does need to go through to the complainant because it's complainant's choice, as rightly pointed out by Deepak sir. And one can make a choice when one is informed of the choices. So yes, I feel like it, since it's given under the Act, if it's scraped off, obviously it is scraped off, but since it's given under the Act, it is the choice of the complainant to either go for conciliation or inquiry. Nobody has to make that choice for her. So as a woman, I would want to know what are my rights. It is my right to know it.
Absolutely. I think we discussed this, but I still want to ask this question to Anusha, that if the allegations are really severe and the woman is still, gunning for conciliation, like it is a severe act, it should go to a police station, or it should IC should take immediate step, because having that perpetrator in the system, maybe for that woman no more could be dangerous, but could be dangerous to other women employees. So can IC still say, okay, you want conciliation, we would okay, go ahead and give conciliation, or IC has a right to say, we heard you, but I don't think a conciliation is an option and a strong action needs to be taken. What do you think about this?
The beauty of conciliation in itself, that if it protects you from the to withdraw from conciliation anytime without prejudice to their legal position, intercede at any stage of the proceeding. You can still opt out if the conciliation doesn't work. And it also obligates the parties' freedom seeking recourse to the court system as well. So as a first step, if conciliation doesn't work, then you can go proceed to the inquiry as well. So conciliation still acts as a filter. It to see from a larger perspective, it is a boon to the complainant. And like stated earlier, more than IC educating people about it, the employer also has a role to play. The employer, who is he or she holds an upper hand in bringing the IC together, in educating every person in and out about the policies, about the stringent measures, about conciliation. The employer also has an upper hand to play in this. So.
All right, awesome. That is great. That clarifies that bit really well. My next question is to Deepak. Deepak, what do you think if the respondent does not agree to the conciliation options or the implications of conciliation? Can IC do anything about it? Can we intervene? Can we do anything about it?
No, so definitely. While again, the section and the PoSH Act is very scuttly and very is not elaborated on what you can take, but the thing is that IC may take steps to ensure settlement through conciliation. So it's kind of left open-ended for IC to ensure and take certain steps to ensure that the matter can be settled through conciliation if the complainant chooses to do so. So to that extent, limited extent, I would still perceive that IC can take certain proactive steps and to ensure that the conciliation goes on to it, because you'll need to understand that what's the intent behind conciliation. Conciliation is the aspect where the complainant has demanded something that, okay, the complainant has certain rights and demands that, okay, the respondent should first accept what has happened, or she may have certain other demand expectations from the respondent. So it is important that both parties understand what is expected from each other, and that respondent acknowledges that there was something which was not appropriate on that part, and this is what is the expectation of the complainant out of this inquiry, out of this conciliation process. And if doesn't agree, then the matter needs to proceed through a formal inquiry channel. So there is that also. The other aspect about are we putting in a lot of time to go through this conciliation process, and in turn delaying the inquiry for a longer duration. So yes, to answer that question, IC can take steps to ensure that the respondent comes to the terms and accepts that what is demanded by the complainant. But yes, we need to be a little careful that doesn't delay the process.
There is an extended question to that, Deepak, of what you said. So is there a specified timelines to complete conciliation? Because that I don't think is mentioned in the law. And what do you suggest?
So again, since there are no timelines which are mentioned, what would suggest that we still don't go beyond the timeline which is specified for the inquiry process. But I would still, as a counsel to the company, would still recommend that IC to actively take up conciliation between the parties. And of course, it should not be just because we are in an informal process of discussion that it can take its own sweet time. We need to be aware of the fact that there is a serious issue that is here, and it doesn't unnecessarily delays the process. And if neither of the parties are ready to budge, it could be on both sides, the complainant and respondents. If the meeting of mind and meeting of expectation is not there, then we need to move to the formal inquiry process, because again, it is on the IC to take steps to ensure that the settlement through conciliation. So if IC feels that it is something which is unlikely or which is not going in the expected route, then yes, we need to opt and inform the parties that it's better to, and in the interest of justice, that we proceed to a formal inquiry route sooner than later.
So that 90 days and less than 90 days, because it could happen with conciliation or it could spill out.
Definitely. So it should not see that we're essentially expanding it 90 plus 90 days.
Yes.
And just because conciliation is there and mentioned, that doesn't give time to the respondent to delay the inquiry process to that much more time.
Got it. So Niharika, any specific outcomes that conciliation has to be given out as an outcome of the conciliation? Is there any special outcome that you think is listed in the law, or anything that you have seen happening while you were dealing as an external member?
Well, the law is very vague about what the outcomes of conciliation can be. But there's one thing which is clearly stated: there's no monetary settlement can be given as a recommendation, or a conciliation settlement can't be monetary. The other thing is that you can't basically seek termination or suspension of the respondent under conciliation, because the whole concept of conciliation is an amicable dispute resolution. I would again use this word, and termination and suspension is something that you're basically punishing the person. You're basically holding him responsible for something which cannot be done before it is proved. And since inquiry is the way to do it. Inquiry is the way where evidences are weighed. There is a recommendation made by the IC, which basically represents, which is a civil court in its power. So obviously we can't go for transfers or suspensions or terminations as such settlement agreement, sorry, as a conciliation agreement. But yes, apologies and other ways of making the work environment suitable for both of them to work harmoniously is what I would aim for.
Awesome. So, Anusha, this is something that we were discussing, and I come to you. Is IC responsible to rehabilitate both the parties once the conciliation is completed?
Of course, yes. So conclusion depends upon two things: whether the complainant has given the complaint with a malicious intent, then we have to take, then there again it will not be concluded. That will again be a fresh start of allegation. Why did she do it? And then there's this other thing which we are familiar with, when the accused is proven guilty. So what common practice is a written, depending upon the severity of the offenses, a written apology, a letter of warning, reprimand or censure, immediate transfer or suspension, withholding. But beyond this, I think there's a larger perspective. All these should pave way for a non-existent of sexual harassment workplace. So some kind of awareness or some kind of something should happen out of the line, like displaying it in the notice board, by keeping the names of the parties anonymous. Something, a new way of solution to the post the conclusion to stop these offenses should come into play.
Right. Anything, a little more, what happens to the complainant and respondent? While this, what you just spoke about is to create an amicable work environment, but the matter is conciliated. They are going back maybe to same jobs or different jobs. Okay. Is there anything that IC should do to watch their mental health, whether they are facing, because there are two people sat across the table, sorted, but what happens to them a month later? So is that an IC's responsibility, or we are done and dusted once the conciliation is done? I know it comes from an HR person, human resource person. I want to ensure that we get back to normal. So that's why I'm extending this question a little more. Do you all, in your practice, in your experience, have you experienced this?
Yeah. So although the act doesn't speak about it, what happens aftermath of the incident, but IC can go a little way beyond, have a refreshed session again, talk to the person again, how is it, micromanage the accused or proven guilty. All those steps can be taken, but is it taken is a question mark, and it differs from an institution to an institution. They should do it. If I was a panel member of an ICC, I would do it.
All right. Thank you so much. Now I'm going to few set of case studies. So we had requested the participants to send in few questions beforehand, so we could include that. So one gentleman has sent us a case study, and I'm going to read out that case study for the panel members to give a response to it, and we could debate this out. So the case study goes like this: an employee who's an engineering graduate with about 3 years of work experience in an IT organization has committed suicide 4 months back. That is January 2021. Looks like a real case. Apparently, due to frustration of several marriage proposals, resulted in rejection and family conflicts on her marriage proposals. This is what was revealed from her friends and colleagues. The demised employee's sister has now represented that her demised sister had relationship with her male colleague, who was married and has 2 children and has been harassing her sister in past, which they have come to know now only after scrutinizing her mobile messages dated in May 2021. messages data in, sorry, not dated, data, messages data in 2021. They claim that she had committed suicide because of that and desired action by the management. Surface level information received are that the demised employee and her male alleged colleague were very good friends, had cordial relationship between them, helpful and supportive to each other at work and nothing beyond. There is no history of sexual harassment complaint made either by the demised employee or by any other on that alleged male employee. How this case is to be conciliated or dealt with? First of all, at the premise or face of it, I don't think it is a conciliation case, but I'll let the panel members pick. Deepak, you want to go for it?
Sure, Smita. So, you rightly mentioned, I think, in this unfortunate case, conciliation has to be raised by the complainant, while the family can make a complaint before the IC on behalf of the complainant who's no more there. But conciliation, I don't believe, will offer much to the complainant's family, in this case, the deceased complainant, I must say. In case if they do have a genuine belief or certain messages, as they may say, to prove that there were any mitigating circumstances, I believe it would be better from the family's perspective if they approach the law enforcement agencies in this regard. Conciliation is unlikely to provide much from the deceased complainant's perspective in this case.
Right. Niharika, you want to add anything here?
I agree with Deepak, sir. Taking in consideration the facts, first, if the person genuinely wants an advice, first, can there be a complaint file? Yes, there can be a complaint file by the legal heir of the complainant. But rightly said, the conciliation is between the complainant and the respondent. And since the complainant is not there, it is a very grave case to prove. So the evidence needs to be weighed in. There should be an inquiry, according to my knowledge and suggestion, that the case should be dealt in by the inquiry of the IC committee to weigh the evidence and come to a conclusion, because it is a very unfortunate case.
Yeah. Anusha, you want to say anything here?
I would like to second what Deepak sir said. He or she needs to be heard, but there again, this is a case which is quite sensitive. So a deeper understanding of more factual evidence, we will be able to assess it.
All right. Do you think there could be, it has to go to police and IC can deal with it simultaneously, or it should be first dealt with by IC and then it could go to law enforcement? What do you all think?
I would say rather the police get involved, because it is I think it's beyond the scope of ICC. Instead of battling between both the sectors, the police sector and the ICC, one person can handle it. So it's better for the police to take over this case. That would be my personal suggestion.
Okay, so Anusha, I stay with you because there is another question which came to us beforehand. This is from Suchitra. She says that during first joint session of inquiry, she realizes after listening to the accused. During the first joint session of inquiry, she realizes after listening to the accused giving explanation to the SMS responses she gave, she would like to take back her case. Can conciliation be suggested at this stage? All right. So what I'm saying is, after the inquiry, after the joint session of the inquiry has started. After that, she wants to now go for conciliation.
Depends upon both the parties have a say, but being the agreed party, she has a higher say. So I think if it's not as ICC is flexible, considering the conciliation is also a good choice, they can still go back and take that. Again, depends upon how far they've invested their time and everything. If you think conciliation will give a better solution to the issue, they can still choose conciliation halfway through is what I would suggest.
I think, Deepak, you had a different opinion about it. You would want to share that?
Right. So my only reservation in that case is that because the wordings of the section itself, they start that before initiation of an inquiry. So there is probably a reason. Of course, I don't have much jurisprudence to support my argument or thought process here, but I would want to leave that in case if during mid-inquiry process, there is a demand for conciliation. More often than not, there may be some outside reasons why a complainant may want to go through a conciliation route and not let the inquiry proceed further. From an IC perspective, would see that, of course, conciliation is something which will, if a settlement is reached, it will have a tendency that inquiry not to proceed further. So IC members is a kind of powers of civil court and all of that. They need to be a little extra careful and seeing that why exactly is request for conciliation coming on now when the inquiry is probably halfway through. So I would, my advice would be that not to go through unless, of course, there is something very severe about it or the reasons why the conciliation request is coming up now, and not to abandon the inquiry once it has started.
Niharika, whom do you support? We have two opinions here.
I actually stand in the middle. So I would really like the panelists to weigh in after what I've said. I agree with both of them, but then I will again come to the point of the objective of the act. Again and again, I'm saying this. See, the thing is that once the inquiry is on a roll and the complainant chooses to conciliate, if the law says that conciliation can be informed as an option before the inquiry starts, it also does not say that conciliation cannot be done when the inquiry has started. There is no prohibition of conciliation in between the inquiry. So since law is not black and white, so there's always the scope to go back to conciliation. Also, as an IC member, IC committee, we have the power to ask and understand why the complainant in the middle of the inquiry wants to go for conciliation. And can she go for conciliation? Yes. But will the matter be conciliated also depends on the respondent. Like for instance, if the complainant is wanting conciliation because it is a malicious complaint and she knows that it will be proved, then the respondent would not want to conciliate. So the complainant will not have a choice but to either take back her case or go through the inquiry, right? But so why conciliation is demanded, like in between the inquiry, is also important. And conciliation can also always be asked for or opted, but it does not necessarily mean that the matter will be conciliated, because both parties need to agree on something.
Absolutely.
Right? So I kind of stand in the between.
And I stand with you, okay?
Thank you.
I absolutely feel that, there are things which are very clearly mentioned, but I also feel there are some times where in words something is written, but the spirit of it talks something else.
Exactly.
Or spirit of it means it differently. So I think spirit of the law is important, as you've been saying from the beginning, and I agree with this. All right. So the next one is, Niharika, I stay with you. A bitch word was used during a meeting. An IC was registered. During inquiry, witnesses brought forth why he came up with the word due to continuous badgering by the lady. During the session with the perpetrator, he said he would like to apologize if she's ready to take back the case. Can conciliation option be suggested to the victim as a choice she can make?
Well, obviously, IC is supposed to inform the complainant about the choice of inquiry or conciliation. But saying that he said the word bitch as a reaction to the woman's badgering is just, it's not an excuse. But yes, if he realizes that the use of that word was wrong, and he's willing to like apologize, and the complainant is willing to accept his apology, is very important, because at the end of the day the law says the right lies with the complainant, whether the complainant wants to conciliate the matter or wants IC to take an action after an inquiry. So it totally depends on the complainant. It's nobody's right to say anything. But yes, the conciliation has to be offered, has to be informed as a right of choice.
All right. Thank you very much for that one. I'm going to, wow, there are so many questions in the chat box, and I'll try and get few of them. We are already 8:01. So conciliation can't be offered. It has to be indicated by the, okay. Conciliation can't be offered. So Anupama says conciliation can't be offered. It has to be indicated by the complainant, is my understanding. You're right, Anupama. But, as I said in the beginning, that a lot of people do not know a word conciliation even exists in their policy. They have a right or responsibility. So it's a good idea to point it out. I don't think IC can offer, can nudge, can push, can force. Nothing can be done. But I think being an IC member for a really long time, I realize when people come, they don't even have an idea about it. So it's a good idea to show them that this is their right. They can be. There is an option of conciliation. So Sundarajan says something like conciliation is a fact-finding approach to establish prima facie, to establish technicality, right? ICC, right or wrong, I don't know, panel. I'm trying to respond on your behalf because I'm also mindful of time. ICC to mandatorily to offer conciliation option, and if any party refused to proceed with the inquiry as per PNJ, Principle of Natural Justice. Wow, I tried to decipher that. So what do you think about it? Panel members, anything you think, or you think Sundarajan is saying? Perfect. We go on. Can conciliation be offered only where the respondent admits to his mistake, or even otherwise where he refuses to accept his wrongdoing?
So I'd like to weigh in a bit onto it. And again, I know as IC members, you have a little bit of soft corner on ensuring and probably tending towards more on conciliatory route. But as a lawyer, I would always advise for IC and for management to be a little conservative on conciliation as such, unless, of course, the complainant herself comes up and says that, okay, this is something that I want to first proceed with the conciliation route. Because there is more often than not, there will be a prejudice towards the fact that if there is an act or something which she feel offended about, there's an alleged act of sexual harassment. Why exactly? What do we achieve by conciliation? Because there's not much for the complainant to get out of that, except for clearing certain misunderstandings and all. So yes, you have to be a little conservative from that aspect, but it's not necessarily that conciliation has to be moved forward if and what's the respondent's view on it, or if he accepts or doesn't accept. It's more that if complainant requests that I need to sit across and I would want IC to facilitate conciliation and settlement on it. And then, of course, we go through the route. Of course, no respondent will straight away admit that there's some wrongdoing on his or her part. But yes, the idea is to make aware people that there was a inappropriate behavior and they require certain course correction. And for both parties to agree, the respondent will have to offer something and the complainant will have to accept what respondent offers. And if she's satisfied with the course correction which the respondent offers. So in that case, conciliation becomes a settlement but yes, as IC, you need to be a little extra careful that the request for conciliation doesn't amount or allows the respondent to get away with something which otherwise would not have happened if the inquiry would have gone through completely.
Thank you, Deepak. I just want to try and explain this with an example. And y'all, I always feel an example really helps well. So there is a complaint against one respondent. It's a party which happened earlier day. Next day, the complainant comes and files a complaint saying that he used some very bad words towards my clothing, which was very derogatory in nature, and I want to file a sexual harassment complaint. But he's a great friend of mine, so I really don't want him to be punished. If he apologizes for this and accepts his mistake, I'm good. Let's conciliate this matter and close. When we approach him, this other person, the respondent, he refuses. He says, no, I never made that statement. Now, in this situation, is conciliation an option? Because there is a complaint. The lady clearly says, I want to conciliate. He's a great friend. He said this, which is wrong. And the other person, the respondent, is not accepting. He said, I never said this. So can IC now take necessary steps to conciliate?
Sure. So I think you've taken already the first step towards conciliation, and you've approached the respondent and informing him about his behavior. And of course, he's clearly denied it. So don't have much choice and to go further, probably a little bit more nudging if the complainant so demands that. Of course, she wants a second attempt for the complainant to accept his misdemeanor. But if that doesn't happen, then you don't have a choice but to proceed through formal inquiry route in that case.
So Pooja Kohli, that's your response. So basically what it is that if he accepts it, great. If he doesn't, then we'll have to do a full-fledged investigation, which includes looking up your witnesses and looking up at any evidences if there are.
If I may, I have something to add here. When we talk of conciliation, we always focus on what the complainant would understand when we give her an option of conciliation. What would she understand of conciliation? But we also need to address what a respondent understands out of conciliation, because conciliation doesn't necessarily mean that I'm admitting to what you're alleging. It basically also means an apology in the form, I'm sorry if you misunderstood something, I did not mean it that way.
All right.
We need to inform and educate the respondent side also, that it does not mean that you're admitting to what she's alleging. It means that you're apologizing that if by misunderstandings or miscommunications it went across wrong, that you did not intend for it to happen, and you're apologetic and you'll be more careful if she gets offended by it. So yes, that also needs to get through.
Awesome. Pooja Kohli, I guess you have got a response from two of our panelist members. Okay, thank you so much, Niharika. I'm sorry, I'm a little rushing because I want to ensure I want to close it on time and not hold so many people here. So the next one is from Sundarajan. Also, conciliation is also to establish the foundation of complaint, as details of true harassment may be missing or misinterpreted, as stated by Niharika. Okay, it's a statement. What can be possible outcome of conciliation apart from discussing and clearing the misunderstanding? I think we responded to that, right? Conciliation cannot be offered. Okay, agree. Absolutely. In absence of definition and or rules of conciliation under PoSH Act, conciliation under Industrial Dispute Act 1947 can be looked at. Okay, that's a great input. Thank you. All right, I'm trying to scroll. Okay, in PoSH, the conciliatory approach is not like the ID Act, wherein it is mandatory and file a report. I don't know, it's too technical for me, and is also a need of adjudication except for individual dispute as per ID Act. Lawyers, please help me. I don't know what it means.
I think the reference here is to probably the Industrial Disputes Act, and there is of course conciliation is not something which is new to employment law domain as such. So traditionally, workforce related disputes, and historically you would see in your movies there's workers union, workers representative bodies, and there is a conciliatory route whereby employers and employee representatives meet and come to a conciliation, but that's mostly in respect of the employment terms, most likely to wage settlements. But yes, not drawing parallels from that, believe conciliation under PoSH Act is quite different from what we understand under ID Act or probably under the Arbitration Act. It's more of an alternative to the inquiry process, and see that if complainant demands, again, that there is some conciliation she would want to opt for, then that's the thing that IC may take steps to settle it. But otherwise, we don't need to go through the intricacies of arbitration or ID Act. They have their own set of complications.
All right. So thank you, Deepak, for clarifying that, because then getting into ID Act would have been very complicated for me. Conciliation was thought of so as to provide for harmony and to re-establish workplace relationship, as it could affect the productivity of industry. If conciliation is not as per the ID Act, then will the arbitration conciliation be governing the law as to the procedure?
Again, that's going back to the thing that if for this conciliation, you need to go back to Arbitration Act. Arbitration Act does have a conciliation as a separate subset of, again, as an alternative to the arbitration proceedings themselves. But again, thought process is that if there is an informal way to sort out the matter, then possibly the parties are free to do that.
All right. I think there are still more questions and it is going on. So I will have to stop here. I see Sundar Rajan's hand raised. So you may want to unmute and ask your question, and then we'll close it. Other questions, we'll try to respond it via email if that is fine for all of you. Sundar, you want to say something here? Oh, is it a mistake? All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Could you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I definitely see the mix of law as well as the management, and very clearly the behavioral science. As one of you, Niharika, had said, it is basically to go to a fact-finding approach, the conciliation. So in Industrial Disputes Act, if there is to be a litigation, failure for individual dispute, that is amounts to section 2A of termination. All other cases, if conciliation failure report is there, only can go for adjudication either to the tribunal or to the labor court. Whereas that is not the case as far as the PoSH law is concerned. The very purpose of conciliation is to mediate, because people do not know the law, people do not know the complaint, and they don't have specific charges. Is to IC to train trained to find out if there is a fact, settle it for harmonious establishment of relationship.
Sundar, I'm not sure if your voice is coming out very clearly. Do you want to type it out and send it to us? We can't hear you. Can others?
If not, go through the process, and if need be, we can do that too.
Sundar, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I'm sorry, but we lost.
I shall.
I lost you for a minute, so I couldn't make out what you're saying. Can anybody else make out what Niharika, Anusha, Deepak, could you all make out?
I shall make it precise.
Could you please type your question? The voice wasn't coming through.
If you can hear me, I'll repeat it very in a very short.
Yes, ma'am.
If I'm audible.
The voice is breaking.
Yes, voice is breaking.
Oh yeah. You know, I know the quality of audio is bad this time.
No worries, Sundar. What you can do is type out an email to us and send it. What we'll also do, if you do it today, tomorrow, when we're circulating our video, we'll also circulate what you're trying to say. So that will be really helpful. Any input is welcome and helpful. So I would come to the close of the session today. Thank you very much, because conciliation for me has been a little scary or sticky, as Deepak started in the beginning. He said it has always been a little sticky, whether to share it with the complainant, whether not to share it with complainant. When can you offer conciliation? I don't want to use the word offer, that's the wrong word, but whether to share with the complainant that you can conciliate you cannot conciliate, or do we have a say about it? Do we, as an IC member, do we even have a say whether you can do it, you cannot do it? What happens if the respondent doesn't agree to the charges? There has always been this unknown stuff in conciliation, so been little hesitant. Today, a lot of these got clarified, and thank you very much for this eminent panel members here. We'll continue this conversation every month on month and keep picking everybody's brains and just sharpen ourselves. And thank you very much. Any closing comment from anybody would be great.
Thank you for the opportunity. Sorry, say you want to go?
No, sorry, Nakshay, please.
Thank you for the opportunity. It was really a wonderful experience, learning and contributing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anusha.
Thank you, Smita, for the opportunity. Lovely hearing from Niharika and Anusha and everyone. A lot of comments I could see. We were not able to respond to that. I was not expecting that we will have such a long discussion about conciliation. Of course, the law and jurisprudence is quite silent. Nothing as compared to what we discussed, and there are a lot of practical aspects we'll have to learn from our experiences, is all I can say. And we have to wait and see as to how this progresses, and if any of the high courts or Supreme Courts do have an opportunity to weigh in onto this, we'll probably see more as to how courts would think about this as an issue.
Thank you so much. Niharika, anything from you?
Yeah, I just like to thank everyone. It was really nice and very intellectual discussion about conciliation. A lot of facets discussed. So it was very intriguing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Niharika. Thank you, Anusha. Thank you, Deepak. We'll close this conversation and continue discussing offline, I guess. Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks all. Thank you, Smita. Bye.
Thank you.